My name is Badresh, and this is the Career Lab, the brand new podcast that delves into stories and strategies to help you build fulfilling professional life. Today, we are diving deep into the transformative career of Kevin Quinn. Kevin is a seasoned trainer, consultant with over 30 years of experience. We will go through his highs, lows, and some invaluable tips to help you reshape your career. The podcast with Kevin will start in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm feeling very humble. Those intros always sound like somebody had a very firm vision of where they were going, but in fact, my journey had many twists and turns, and that I think is one of the things we're going to talk about today.
Now, let's jump right in. What I want to ask you first is when you completed your master's from Queen's University, what were you thinking then?
It was almost like a negative choice I made. I don't want to go on to do a PhD because I'm not that kind of deep dive person. I'm much more of a broad, I like to learn a lot. In fact, I later discovered learning was one of my strengths from the Gallup Strengths Finder. So it was almost like, well, I'm not going to do that. What am I going to do? I actually took a year off with my then wife and we traveled through Europe. Then I came back and thought, okay, it's time to get a job. So I did another master's in public administration because that suited me for all kinds of work potentially in government as a leader or an advisor. And at that point, I just looked at who was hiring. And so one of the folks who was hiring had an internship program. I realized I didn't really know much about working. So the internship was 2 years long and it was at the Ministry of Health. I didn't have any background in health, but I figured, well, I've got a good brain, I can learn. And before I knew it, I was working in 6 or 8 different areas. One of the areas that I went into was the computer systems area. And they were on the verge of going from huge enterprise systems to specific on your desk mind tools. That's the way I thought of them. And so I got in on that. And that's where the transition started, going from somebody who kind of learned how to think and write and get evidence for understanding things to somebody who wanted to have those kinds of tools for the mind available to people. And now that I think about it, with AI becoming so popular now and everybody thinking, what's this going to mean? Back then it was the same thing. What's it going to mean to have a computer on your desk? Then it seemed like it would be magic just to have that computer there, to be able to, it was almost the same feeling, like you could do anything, but it also might be dangerous. The same thing happened back then. And I was excited to help go from these stuffy rooms with computers and technical people. And I was excited to kind of be the translator of that to regular people so that they could have access to that kind of magic. And so that appealed to me. And so over a couple of years, I learned enough of the technical stuff that I could then give people advice on how they could use these tools as well.
Wonderful. It's interesting you brought up your Gallup's discovery you did. So I read Gallup's employee survey 2003 report, and I will attach that to the description below if anyone is interested to read that. What it says that 69% employees in US and Canada both are not engaged at work. Question our generation is asking, like, am I stuck in this job? Do I want to move somewhere else? How do I reignite my career? Did you ever felt stuck in a career or job during your IT times?
I sure did. That excitement soon wore off that I encountered at first, because as I got more into my career in IT, they wanted me to manage big projects that would automate business systems. And then I ended up managing a bunch of computer geeks and nerds, and they're not much fun to hang around. They're brilliant people, but they're just no fun after work. And I ended up also beyond my own competence. I never really wanted to be a computer guy. So by the time I was almost 10 years in, I really felt like so I would sit at my desk, and when people would walk by, I'd put my hands on the keyboard and look really busy. And then when they'd go away, I'd kind of put my head down and think about other things. And I knew there was something really wrong. And the story that I told until a few years ago was that I just decided that it wasn't the right thing for me. The story I told was that I had decided that it was not a good idea for me to continue in IT. But a couple of years ago, I found in an old box my performance appraisal from that time. And obviously, I'd blanked this out of my memory because when I pulled it out, it was really a terrible performance appraisal. Kevin is unable to manage his projects on time. We're going to reduce the number of staff that he's managing from 8 to 3 because that might be all he can manage. And looking at that, I realized I'm not an incompetent person, but boy, I looked incompetent because of the mismatch between me and the work that I was doing. It was way too technical. It was about business systems, financial systems, just not anything that I felt like I wanted to learn more about. And so, yeah, I was stuck big time.
I can absolutely relate to that because I was in IT for 2 years, and I was exactly the same way as well. When my manager will be walking in, yes, I'm looking busy, I'm working everything, and then when they all go away, me and even my colleagues, they will join me. Oh, okay, how's your day going now?
Yeah, let's be real now.
Let's be real now. But I think so that's one of the pressing issue, and we want to move towards how you reignite your passion. Before we do that, before we go into that segment, I want to tell audience how we met. So me and Kevin met in Toastmasters Club, and every time Kevin will go into the stage and deliver his speech or impromptu speech, it will remind me of a teacher or or professor from my school who would give you all the learnings of that subject without making you feel boring. Because some subjects can be very boring, but some teachers have ability to make them fun and make them very engaging for audience and for students. And Kevin had that capability, and that just stuck with my head. And that and teachers have a special place in my heart. I really respect them. My father is a teacher as well, so that really stuck with me. And at that time, Kevin, I didn't even knew that you were a teacher because we didn't even contacted that much, right? So how did you find out that teaching is really your one of your passion?
I remember the time, by the way, at Toastmasters when you were evaluating one of my speeches, and instead of saying, Kevin did this, Kevin did that, he looked at all of us, including me, and said, "You know how there's that one amazing teacher, different from all the other teachers, who does wild things or makes you think or makes you do weird stuff, and then later you remember it forever." And what an honor that felt to be that kind of teacher, because I had teachers like that too, that were just so surprising and amazing, and to be held up amid that group, I felt amazing too. So how I got there, by the way, that kind of performance, what I do, and the reason I do that is because I know I'm on my strength when I'm doing that teaching or even speaking about it. Okay, so let's go back to 1990, and I'd been in IT for almost 10 years, and I really felt stuck and bad. And I didn't, nowadays there are career coaches and things like that. But in those days, it was like, huh, suck it up, do your job. Certainly that would be my parents' generation way of thinking about it. I just felt like I didn't want to be this unhappy for very much longer. There was a book called What Color is Your Parachute? A strange title. It was about finding the right job for you. And I remember distinctly it had exercises. I think a lot of people read such books, but they don't actually do the work within them. I did the work, and it asked me to think about a vignette, a moment in time, and describe it in a paragraph of 4 or 5 of these when I felt that I was really doing something amazing, something that I liked, something that was helpful. And so I thought back, and I remembered teaching my professor how to use a word processor, like how to use the equivalent of Word back in those days, because he wanted to do a really long paper, and he hated putting it out to a typist and having it come back and correcting it. He wanted to do it himself. So I showed him how to use it. And to have my professor thank me for helping like that, it felt pretty wonderful because normally he was the boss. And then I remembered other times where I'd been advising people, teaching people, especially bridging from complicated tools to something that they could use. And and then it said, okay, great, thanks. If I've got all my 5 vignettes are in there, and then it had a big page. The page contained hundreds of adjectives describing what you're doing when you're doing your work. And I went through it and I scanned it, and just popping off the page for me was teacher, advisor, coach, translator, words like that to describe somebody who helps others, other smart people, to become even more smart by using tools and processes and ways of thinking that could get them unstuck. And I thought, oh, I'm a teacher. It's so obvious. And when I saw that, it just flashed back through my mind since almost all of the most fun experiences in my life were teaching. When I was 15 years old, I started teaching other kids how to sail. When I was in university, I was teaching other people how to do things like use use a typewriter. Even I taught other people how to type. So I was somebody who loved coaching and teaching others. It felt like the all the clouds had parted and I can suddenly see 100 miles. It was just so amazing to know that I was a teacher. Then came an instant moment of depression because I thought, a teacher, oh God, because the only picture I had was of a high school teacher. And high school teachers were, most of them, there were some amazing ones, but most of them were kind of, ugh, grungy job, a lot of kids to handle that didn't really want to learn. And so I thought, oh God, I don't know what I'm going to do. Somehow I learned that there was another kind of teaching called adult education, where you would teach people how to do their work, teach them topics in business and technology. And I thought, oh well, I could always teach them how to use computers. So I went around the world of academic syllabuses and found out that there was a place in Toronto I could go back. At the time, I was up in Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories, and I realized I'd have to move. I did come back, and I started a doctorate in adult learning. I didn't even know there was a thing called adult learning. And that was a wonderful few years discovering that there was a whole new way of teaching people, that you didn't have to be the expert in anything or in everything. You needed to help people learn as opposed to teach them, jam ideas in their head. I love the philosophy of adult education, which is that the person you're educating already knows a great deal about the topic. It's a very humanistic feeling, like I can respect you at the same time as I'm teaching. I don't have to be the boss of you to be your teacher or super expert compared to you. I just need to point you in the right direction. You can do a lot of the work yourself. So it's been, so that entered me into the beginnings of my career as a teacher. When that started, I was kind of pulled into consulting where you are kind of more of an expert and into work that was okay, or I thought I could teach anything. And one of the things I started teaching was how to organize your office. And Marie Kondo hadn't come around yet to tell us how to organize things. And I was terrible at teaching that. So it took maybe another 10 years to learn my trade and also to learn what I love to teach. And I found two or three things that I love to teach because I'm very good at them and I can help others become very good at them. And one is project management, how to get things done. Another is how to present your ideas and influence people. And the third one is how to collaborate with others, how to get people to work together. In other words, how to have great meetings. And now I feel like there's just these three little things that you can fit in your hand, but they encompass a great deal of what gets done in business and government. And so I found for the last 10 years my true path. That was quite a long answer. Sorry.
No, that was really amazing. It was really insightful. And the part which really stuck with me, that it was realistic. Because yes, you had a moment of epiphany that, yes, this is amazing. I'm a teacher now. This is I love to do. But at the same time, you had a moment of depression as well. What I do now, I hate those teachers at a high school. I don't see myself in there. And that's where I see my friends, myself stuck at one point, and a lot of young people stuck at that point where, like, yes, I know I have certain passions, but how do I convert them? into that. So maybe let's go a little bit deeper in there. What specific actions you took? Uh, so you had that moment of depression where you oh, find out that, hey, yes, I'm going to do teaching, but maybe different way. You went into adult learning at University of Toronto, but what steps did you took before that?
I had to sell my sailboat, my house. So one of the things is that if you are going to embark on a new path, you kind of have to be ready to really suck it up for a couple of years while you're getting reestablished. One of the or an IT consultant I met said that he had gone from being an employee to a consultant, and he'd saved enough money for 2 full years of no income whatsoever. And I thought, wow. So that was on my mind, and indeed it did take a long time to get reestablished. Now, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. I thought I'd have to kind of go from scratch, maybe
Mm-hmm.
just become a junior teacher. But before you know it, because I had 10 years of experience as an IT consultant and project manager, I was actually able to come in at a much higher level than I realized. So, yes, you do have to step backwards. And yes, it's going to cost you if you're going to go for a really big shift. But the payback is enormous.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And since we are talking about passion, I wanted to ask you from a long time. I know we are friends. We always talk about these things, but so there is this two school of thoughts. First is it says find your passion, discover your passion. Steve Jobs said, "Love what you do, and you will never work in your life again." And there is another school of thought, and this is mainly coming from when I read Carl Newport's book, which is So Good That You Cannot Ignore. He says that you cannot do what you love right away. Like Steve Jobs didn't do what he loved, even though he says, because otherwise he would have been Buddhist monk.
Hmm.
That's what he was really into spirituality. So what he proposes is you work on your skills. You gather your valuable skills, and you become so good at that that no one can ignore you. So what kind of school of thought you lie yourself in? What would you say about that?
I guess I would come down more around finding your passion or your strengths, not in from sort of an inner feeling of them, but
Mm-hmm.
like test them out. Find out what are your strengths using Strengths Finder or some other tool, and then yes, develop them. In fact, developing those strengths won't be hard because when you're on your strengths, it actually doesn't seem like you're studying. You're just taking a course for interest, and it's making you more skilled in an area. But if you to put it into my context, the first 10 years of my life, I worked in areas where it made sense to work there. IT was growing, and it really made sense to work there. I'm a logical thinker, so the logic of IT, of systematic development of business tools, that made sense, and it made sense for me to go there. But all that sense didn't eventually turn out to make much sense for me in terms of how I felt. So I think I veer more towards the passion, but after all, you do need to have some specific skills. So find the strengths, or build on the skills that support those strengths. For example, one of my strengths is learner. Another one is maximizer, which isn't as obvious. Maximizer means that I love working with things or people that are already pretty good and just improving them a little so they're amazing. I don't, for example, I don't teach people who are at the beginning of things. I don't like, or I'm not passionate about teaching people who are, kind of remedial learners or just trying to make it to become okay. I only work with people who are high performers because that's what enlightens me. I'm not saying it's the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it. I'm just saying that that's who I am. And once I learned that, I focused on the kinds of work that would take me there. And yes, I studied hard to do that. I continually research. For example, I'm big into AI now because that's the kind of tool that the high performers will be using. So I need to be ahead of that wave, and I am ahead of the wave for most people. Even among my colleagues who do teaching and learning and are very advanced in their skills, I'm a little bit ahead of them because I'm still devoting myself to. I'm sort of trying to be too good to be ignored around that stuff. So I kind of believe in both philosophies, but when you're developing those skills, you got to make sure those skills are the ones that match your inner sense of what works for you.
Before I get into a question, you're one of the most like punctual and organized people I've seen in my life. And how would you suggest a young or even a person in their mid-career how to manage their time and boundaries? Because we are in the age where work from home is reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so hard to keep working on your passion but forget about your family. So it is important to have balance. And I've seen you master that. So whatever I've seen you master that. So how would you suggest that to a young person?
I guess there's nothing for me that replaces planning. Uh, I think, especially when we're younger, we think we have our plans in our heads. We think we have our reminders in our heads. We think we know what's important and we can keep track of it. And I've been very much influenced by David Allen, who says that you got to get it all out of your head and into a dependable, easy system that can remind you of things so that the rest of the time you can just be relaxed and or be creative, for example, or just be recreating with your family. You only have so much time in your life, and you won't be able to get done everything you want to get done. The important thing will be to figure out what's key and what people are going to feel like they depend on you for, and make sure you get those things done and get reminded of those things in time to get them done. Now, I do want to, full disclosure, I quite often pull all-nighters, and so I'm not as organized as you think I
Okay.
am. I do get to meetings, and I guess the reason I'm punctual and deliver things is because I really value the relationships that I'm committed to. And so when that's the case, I do make plans. Like I've got to do this by then, so I better get started now. I better do a rehearsal. Um, Getting to meetings, it's like, okay, don't do wishful thinking about how long it's going to take to get
Mhm.
to the meeting. Recognize that this is the amount of time. And unless you leave at this time, maybe it's partly because I'm a sailor and sailboats go really slowly. So I know that, like, if I'm going to get back to a place that I'm supposed to be so I can work the next day, I have to leave 2 days earlier. And so it's maybe being realistic about what's possible and then making a plan that that everything works. You can actually, if I'm, for example, if I'm doing a paper, I know, or like a speech at Toastmasters, I realize that okay, I have to get the speech done a couple of days ahead. I need to practice it a couple of times, and then I probably need to cut things out because they're always longer than they should be. So so two things, I guess, to summarize. One would be to make sure that you get stuff off your mind and put it into a system that reminds you when you can do something about it. You don't want that system like to come into your head at night when you're with your family. So put those into a place you can depend. And the other one is then to actually make a plan that's realistic. If you have something to do, before you put it into that planning system, write down the 5 steps it's going to take to get it done. And doing that, you might realize, oh, that step's actually going to take longer or depend on somebody else. So don't just say it's going to take 15 minutes to get that done because it might take 4 hours or 2 days if it depends on somebody else getting back to you. So you can't replace planning, and you need a system to get it off your mind.
Thank you so much. That is very, very valuable. Now, before we wrap this up, last question. What message would you give to our audience who is stuck in a job and who's looking to reignite their passion, reignite their career?
One is that things can change very quickly. You might think that you're in a deep hole and it's going to take you years to climb out, but something could turn around. For me, for example, after I started my learning journey, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to become a consultant and slowly build up a clientele, one person at a time. But one of my friends worked at a big organization, and had me come and talk to them about adult education, and they liked what I said, and they offered me a job within a few months. And so things changed very quickly, and they could change for young people today very quickly. And remember, that story depended on a friend providing access. So think about your friends and the network that you have. I know networking is often sort of a euphemism, but do ask your friends, what do you do? And do you need people who have my special kind of skills? So that's one thing. Things can change very fast. The other is get momentum going. The worst times in my life is when I'm not moving forward. I'm not thinking about a project. I'm not doing a project. Get started on something. The fact that you're doing these podcasts is an example of just getting started. Who knows whether 10 people are going to look at this or a million people are going to look at this. Because you're getting the momentum going, then you learn as you go. You can change direction once you're moving, but when you're sitting still, you look all around, any direction looks fine. But you start to get information, feedback, get noticed, you start to grow, you learn yourself. Do I like this direction? Not really. I think I'll take another direction. So get momentum going. Move.
That's the best advice I think I've heard. So I was really stuck in my analysis paralysis of doing this research, that research. I'm taking time out of my work. And after I think so, I'm doing that for 3 to 4 months, my friend pointed out to me, but I've seen you working very hard on changing your careers. What have you done so far?
Well,
And I'm like, okay, I not really, I'm nothing. I had nothing to say. So taking action and building momentum is really big thing when you're stuck in your career. Get out of your head and go out and take action, have momentum, and then things will just start happening. Thank you so much, Kevin. This was amazing conversation. I don't care if this goes to 1 million or 10 people, but this is a very valuable conversation we had. Thank you so much for being at Career Lab.
it's an honor, and I value your friendship.
Thank you so much for listening to the very first episode of the Career Lab. Do like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're listening us on any audio format, please consider rating us. Join us again when we explore another pivotal aspect of professional journey. And until then, remember, your passion is waiting to be reignited. Go out there and fight it.